And yet what we need to do is a fusion of souls that lead to cosmic unity. And this ultimately is the life force. What is it that we, who are we? What are we? That's the question I used to ask as a young student in Brighton growing up, wanting to be a philosopher. What are we? Where do we come from? What is life? Well, the life force is this love force. And interestingly, if you study language, life and love sound very similar. Life and love are actually the same word. The one is the noun and the other is the verb. So when you love somebody, what you're saying is, I recognise and appreciate your life force. My life force within me appreciates and worships your life force. And we mutually inspire and enthuse each other to be more life-full. So that's what love is. It's the life energy. And at a science level, biologically, our biological systems are made of that love force and that life force. People like my colleague Rupert Sheldrake, who studied the subtle body behind the physical body, know that we're surrounded by these energy fields, which esoterics call the force fields or the aura, and they have different sheaths, so koshas in Sanskrit, and that's what infuses our body with a wholeness. If the body was split, I would die. We would all cease to be. Life is the beating heart, the circulation of the blood, the oxygen, the electricity, the neurons, the neurotransmissions, the hormones. Everything is in one perfect system. Well, the system implies an engineer, a design chief, and that's love. So when it says in the Christian Bible, God is love, God came down to earth as an avatar, well, yes, thank you. But as theologians realise, it's there potentially in all of us. It's a universal descent of that love principle. So each of us that can work more with our hearts, become more attuned to that cosmic love energy, tune into the defragmentation we need to do in our own lives, family lives, personal lives, more we get with that love and order tradition, the less chaos we'll see out there in the political world. What I'm trying to do, I've set up also this last week, the Centre for, the Campaign Against Political Lying, because the truth force has to be brought into Parliament to make these people accountable. And at the moment we've got politicians like Boris Johnson who think lying is acceptable. They have to realise it is no longer acceptable. We are insisting that Sat Yuga come back, and that's the age of truth. The people of the planet demand it. There are 100 million people and more in absolute poverty on this planet, like less than $1 a day, scrabbling on, scrap heaps for a few fragments to eat. This is utterly unacceptable. This planet should be a planet of plenty and sharing and compassion and empathy. And that's the Sat Yuga that I'm working for, and that all of us should be. And that's why I'm so utterly opposed to Brexit, because it represents the Seth project of destruction, dismemberment, and entropy. So I also want to celebrate today this love between Mary Magdalene and Jesus, and the mystery of their, what I call a wisdom affair. We don't know the details. It's been kept from history. It's been kept from us, which is why I've founded the Mary Magdalene Studies Association here in France. We've had 3 successful conferences. There'll be another one next year, and we're also going to have a second conference in the Pyrenees, 3rd conference in Alais-les-Bains, wonderful town in the Pyrenees, because some people say Mary Magdalene was there in France. I don't know. It's interesting. We're inviting speakers from all over the world to explore that. But I do know that Mary Magdalene and Christ stand for that love energy, that tantric wisdom affair that we all, as human beings, that's where we come from. Our parents and, our own beloveds. That's what this planetary journey is about. And I want to celebrate also today, because it's the day of the Saint Bruno of Chartreuse, a great Christian mystic who lived from 1032 to 1101. Each day, those of my students and friends know, I celebrate the saints and sages of the day. From all religions, I record every day a little talk about this, which you can hear on my Green University website. This man was one of the most important of all the Christian saints, really, important in European context, founder of the Carthusian order. He was born in Cologne. He became a canon at the cathedral, which is one of the most amazing cathedrals in the world. And then he became a lecturer in the grammar and theology department of the cathedral school at Reims, which was the very spiritual centre of the French traditions, and it's where the monarchs of France were crowned for centuries. He taught there for 18 years. So like me, he was a teacher, and he had many students. One of them became Pope Urban II. I'm not sure if any of my students are going to become Pope, but please get in touch if you do, because we could certainly set up an order of St. Thomas. I think that would be jolly good. Anyway, eventually he was mediating and all kinds of things, and then he left Cologne just to become a simple monk. He'd had enough of city life, and under the direction of a hermit called Robert of Malem, he moved into the area around Grenoble, whose bishop, St. Hugh, helped him and 6 companions to live in solitude. And they lived in the woods. They built little huts. It was a beautiful forest-covered mountainous area. They built an oratory, and they lived in simplicity, poverty, solitude, and prayer. Now, some people think, well, that's stupid, why bother with that? The point is, on the Christian spiritual dharmic path, like on the yogic path of India, by retiring to the forest like this, what you're saying is you're going to go to the forest ashram. That's what the sages of India did. That's what Yudhishthira did. That's what Rama did. And that's what any saint has to do, is go to the forest to find truth, to find righteousness. It's what Gandhi did when he came back from South Africa. He went to live in an ashram. That's why I run a kind of ashram here in the middle of France, which is a very forested part of Old Gaul. This is my forest ashram, if you want. And then he was summoned to Rome to advise the Pope, his former student, on how to run the church, because it always had problems of corruption and people pretending to be Christians who lacked the spirit of it. And he set up a hermitage in Rome, in part of Rome, and he helped inspire some of the efforts at reform. And then he went back to a new monastery he was given in Calabria, in Italy, at La Torre. And so he founded a second Carthusian monastery there and died there in 1101. And Carthusian monks came to England in 1173. Hugh of Lincoln was one of them. And they had many impacts, not least the founding of Charterhouse on one of their properties where my nephew was educated. It's a good public school in England. So the Carthusians are Christians who take Christ's teachings seriously enough to practice prayer, solitude, reflection, and truth-seeking. That's what Gandhi meant when he said a peacemaker is a truth-seeker, satyagrahi. Now, Bruno of Chartreuse was a truth-seeker. The fact that they also invented Chartreuse, this wonderful liqueur, this green liqueur you get after meals, was a nice extra thing, because you've got to remember these abbeys were the monasteries providing hospitals and medicines, and each of them grew a herb garden for healing, and also they ran schools for educating people. So, and in Europe here, there are many monasteries. Some are functioning still, some are like museums, and the European Union has just devoted a fund of, many millions of euros to help all these monasteries. They have priceless libraries, they have amazing art treasures. I've been to the one at Monte Cassino, the mother church of the Benedictine order. Priceless library, unbelievable. So these rich treasures around Europe we celebrate today, and throughout England, Scotland and Wales, there are still monasteries and places of spiritual refuge. And I'll just finish with one last little thing. Again, a lot of my projects for peace, founded through my Peace Institute from the University of London, are thinking through 10 moves ahead, how to dismember the forces of good. So, and the word remembering means to literally to remember, put back together again. That's ISIS magic, the white magician does, okay? So one of those projects concerns a letter I wrote to Prince Charles when he becomes king, I suggested he rebuild the monasteries of England and Wales and Scotland, were destroyed at the Reformation, as a project, because it would give lots of employment to unemployed kids in cities. They could go out and rebuild them, literally learning building skills, masonry skills, architecture, gardening skills. It would give employment to the craftsmen who could make stained glass windows and so on again. And that they should all be refounded as spiritual pilgrimage centres. So the great ruined abbeys like Glastonbury and Rievaulx and Lewes and all these great religious places would then become spiritual pilgrimage centres that the next generation of young people in Britain and Europe could visit, and they would all have libraries, they would have a kitchen, they'd be fed for 3 days, they would be welcomed guests, and then they could stay longer and help. You know, a bit like Findhorn has visitors and they all do their bit for a time. But they wouldn't insist you kind of sign up to any branch of Christianity. They could be loosely run by the Church of England or the Church of Scotland, whatever's the church in that country, and yet be open to pilgrims of all faiths. So the libraries would have books on Judaism and Hinduism and Buddhism and all the gods, all the many names of God, if you want, like one of those retreat centres in Wales is called. So I think that's my vision for what we do when Charles becomes king, is we revive the spiritual integrity of our land, and all these places are still there. They're just ruined, and it's time we rebuilt them. So that's an example of white magic in action, and I hope I live long enough to see them literally come back and flourish, and likewise across Europe. So anyway, there's a few things to think about. Justice for my friend Mark Williams, who was murdered. Justice against Boris Johnson, who apparently knew it was going on and said nothing. The man is a liar and a scoundrel and a cheat. And vision and hope for the future of our country, the United Kingdom, living in harmony with our neighbours in Europe, a beautiful continent. You know, we are part of that beauty. We need to remember our original beauty and all work together to make possible a restoration of that continent living at peace. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate, that you can join me on this day, and we also lastly should remember also St. Bruno, the great, mystic, simply living in the forest. Let us all find that inner peace to enable us to do that. Thank you so much. Shalom.